This tutorial presents a user authentication solution targeting IoT applications for smart enterprises. This research work is a part of my Ph.D. dissertation titled, Next Generation User Authentication Schemes for IoT Application. Also, we published this work in a paper titled, A Prospective Study Towards Biometric-Based Rider Authentication Schemes for Driverless Taxis. In International Conference on Innovation and Intelligence for Informatics, Computing, and Technologies. Waymo launched driverless taxis in January 2019 in Arizona. Similarly, other companies involved in driverless technologies are planning to launch their driverless taxi services soon. Driverless vehicles use AI and can be used like transportation as a service. Customers can book Waymo's service by using a smartphone application. Among the many other overarching challenges in driverless taxis, rider's authentication, that is verifying the rider's identity, is an important requirement. Why rider authentication is required? It is essential. How to identify a person who hires the driverless taxi, and then causes some damages to the taxi, which could be hazardous for following customers of that taxi. How to deny rides to the persons who were indulged in activities, intentionally or unintentionally, that resulted in the malfunctioning of crucial safety systems of driverless taxis. Do the customers prefer to share a ride with strangers in a driverless taxi without their verification done by the service providers? How to identify a rider who robs or abuses the fellow passengers in the shared driverless taxis. Other threat models that can be considered are: how to catch persons having malicious intentions, for example, someone who planted some illicit object like explosives in a taxi that resulted in mass casualties or caused serious damage to the subsequent customers. Lastly, how to avoid unforeseen incidents as the consequences of unsupervised access to riders with diversified motivations, such as curiosity, monetary benefits, malicious intentions, or terrorism. We conducted an online survey to study the need of rider authentication for driverless taxis, to address safety and security concerns, and we published this survey on on-demand ride and rider sharing user groups. Approximately 90% of participants supported to deploy biometric-based rider authentication. Our survey contains 3 demographics questions related to the participants' continent-wide location, age group, and gender. Demographic statistics of 75 participants that you can observe in the slide. Continent-wise participants distribution shows the participation of all the continents having people's presence. Approximately 93.3% of survey participants were from the 17 to 45 age group, which is likely to be the age group using public transport the most. Figure 2c exhibits gender-wise distribution with 69.3% male and 26.7% female participants. This slide presents rider authentication acceptance results. 90% of participants either strongly agreed or agreed to deploy rider authentication for driverless taxis. This slide presents the results of participants' preferences for biometrics modalities for rider authentication. According to the survey, face is the most preferred modality for rider authentication. This slide compares the biometrics versus conventional authentication schemes acceptance. Approximately, 74.7% prefer biometrics over knowledge-based schemes. And, 73.3% prefer biometrics over token-based schemes. The number of training samples required to create user's template for a biometric trait is an important usability criterion for a usable user authentication system design. 75.3% of participants prefer to provide up to 10 training samples, for user biometrics template creation. Therefore, the less number of training samples is generally more preferred. Driverless taxis can be used individually or shared with other riders. Unsupervised physical access to driverless taxis exposes them to customers with different motivations such as curiosity, monetary benefits, malicious intentions, or terrorism. Thus, biometric-based rider authentication for driverless taxis aid to customers and the general public safety and security. Biometric-based authentication schemes are more efficient to counter attacks when employed in security-critical systems. They have shown higher usability acceptance in contrast to conventional authentication schemes. I hope this tutorial gives the insight to select a suitable rider authentication scheme. If you have any questions, please comment. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to my channel and like the video.